Nelson.
Here.
Stata.
Here.
Beschen. Bergstrom.
Here.
Bonsonfield.
Here.
Reese.
Here.
And Malcolm. Thank you.
Excellent. We'll take a little delay for Carly in there. First on the agenda here is a welcome to Laura Reese, our new trustee. So thank you for joining us today. John wasn't on our virtual meeting the other day, so you guys have met each other.
Yes,
so awesome. Well, welcome and thank you for joining our team. Okay, next I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is community input. So I'm just gonna ask, I always ask, I want to make sure if you want to join, you can. So we will move on to the consent agenda then. Can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from both the August meeting and the September 8th special meeting?
And the special meeting minutes did not make it in the packet. I ran out of time, so those will be presented at the next month's
So
meeting.
just a motion to approve the minutes from our August meeting then.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Next is review and payment of available bills and acceptance of financial reports. Can I have a motion to review those together?
Yes. So
Is there a
moved.
second?
Second.
Excellent. Jennifer?
So usually we have a list of all the bills that we are submitting for payment in a given month. So they're usually in alphabetical order. We do have a separate section at the bottom for bills related to the building project, so that you can kind of see those itemized out. If there's ever any questions about something you see, please let me know. We do have some fees for some staff members who are participating in a library journal workshop this fall, so it'll be a great continuing education opportunity for those 3 management team members. That's under L for Library Journal. We had a parking lot light repaired for Solar Electric. And then if you have any questions on any other items, I'm happy to talk about those. For the building project expenses, we do have 2 months of OPN bills, and those are for significant phases of the project. So we'll see those bills go down as we enter the bidding, the next phase of the project. And then we have the cost for Middleton. That's the construction cost estimate that was done to kind of help us make sure we're on target for project costs versus what our project design is. And then the bottom just shows receipts of revenue sources we got in the past month. Are there any questions on any specific items that you see?
Okay. Reports.
So financial reports we just include in the packet each month. In general, we're usually in pretty good shape, and I try to bring attention to anything that we're really over or under, or there's any strange activity for. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. We are a little bit shorter this year for revenue than we would like to be. We haven't quite rebounded from, being a little slower with people not, coming in as much with the pandemic. But we're kind of headed towards that direction with revenue. Are there any questions on anything you see on the financial report? Sometimes there are expenses that might show that they're 100% or really nearly spent in the middle of the year, and that's often because those account items include one-time expenses. But I'm always happy to answer any questions you have about any of the specific items.
Okay. Doesn't sound like there's any questions, so all in favor of approving invoices and the financial reports say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Okay, thank you. Information items, committee reports, building committee, and new library project schedule.
So we do have the project schedule in your packet. On the second page of that, you can kind of see the lines that I highlighted that are kind of right where we're going to be entering. So the project went out to bid on Monday, and there's just shy of 3 weeks for the general contractors to get numbers together and submit a bid on the project. Bid opening will be September 29th. That deadline was chosen because it allows us to get that information to the village board for their October 3rd meeting. And then, assuming that we have a bid that falls within budget parameters, we're hoping we'll be talking a little bit later about scheduling a special meeting to hopefully award that bid contract so we can move forward with the project. Are there any questions on the schedule? Like, most of the items have already been completed, so we're kind of getting down to the construction section is kind of the last outstanding section where we have to-dos. We do have the permit section also. There's some permits that we've applied for. The state building permit stuff is still outstanding, so the permit hasn't been issued yet, but there's been submittals on those. And then the building committee met last week or the week before, and they went over a lot of the interior color selections. So we're working on getting some samples that we can show you at the next meeting. You can kind of see all the tile, all the paint colors, and some of the carpet selections that we'll be having in the library. There's a lot of neutral carpets, grays and blacks, so we can kind of use furniture as kind of the color choice for flexibility, and then having a little bit of paint highlights here and there to brighten things up a little bit. So hopefully we'll be able to share some of those things with you at our next meeting.
Any questions on that? Yep. If you're listening out there, please bid on our construction project. Next is the library director report.
So welcome again to Laura, who's joining us right now. So we're happy to have her jump right in. I told her she's probably jumping in at the most complicated time in recent history to jump in on the library board, but I feel like we have great people to do that. A few things. The village administrator did a nice new program to drop in for library staff at the library, so it was a great chance for him to meet our staff. He's doing that at all the village departments to kind of just have a chance to meet people and hear about any questions or concerns they have. So it was a great opportunity. We do have Emily Roosh, who just joined us as a part-time circulation assistant. And then we had Sam Canny, just moved on from his last day after, I think, 5 years as a library page. So we'll miss Sam. And Eric completed his second year as a limited term employee, so it was great to have him back for the second summer in a row. We also participated in the last week. Kelly and Wendy and Kara, I think, were all at Monarch Festival on Saturday outside the school, so that was a great community event. It's story time. Wendy did story time because Kelly was on vacation the week before. And then last night they were invited to, Kelly and Wendy attended the 4K outreach event. They were invited to be part of that, so they appreciate that partnership with the school and the 4K students. Trustee Training Week happened in August, and there are recordings available if any of the topics on that list are of interest to you. You can watch those at any time. I kind of already covered the building project highlights. I think those were covered either at our last meeting or not, but I did want to mention that I did meet with our friends in the library to kind of talk about what role they want to have. They've been doing all of our gardening and weeding and taking care of the great flowers outside the current library, so we wanted to just kind of start a conversation about what role they wanted to have at the new library. We don't want to expect too much of them, but also appreciate all they've done and want to kind of right-size that for their interest level. So we started that conversation. They're also having their book sale on October 15th at the Youth Center. The Friends success of their book sale goes right to our library programs, so I encourage you to support it or spread the word however you can. And then just two Village of Oregon things that, sorry Conley, don't mean to take your thunder, but the village is doing a compensation study that's still in progress that they hope to complete this fall yet before they approve the budget. And then they're also, I should let Carlene talk a little bit more about the DEI training. Carlene, do you want to talk about that briefly?
Sure. So the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee has met several times beginning back in June, and we determined that Nehemiah, gee, I don't remember the whole name of it. The group that works with the school district as well, we chose them for training of village staff, board members, and committee members who would like to participate. And we had our last meeting was with Harry Hawkins to talk about what that training might look like, and we are in the process of figuring out just what the different modules, who will be involved, when it will start, etc. So it's a really wonderful group of folks, and we spent the first few meetings just really getting to know one another and outlining our goals for the committee, and so another thing that we'll be working on is thinking about how we can be better at recruiting more diverse folks to be parts of things like the library board and other boards and committees that are part of the village, and also taking a look at holidays and how we celebrate those holidays, observe those holidays in the village. And this came up because the village board and village offices were open on Juneteenth, and we met on Juneteenth, and we had done the same thing on Martin Luther King holiday, and so we're having a discussion about that and looking at holidays in general, federal holidays in general, and we'll be making recommendations to the board about that as well.
Thank you, Carlene. In your packet,
Yes, thank you.
You also have the September calendar just showing the different programs we have kind of summarized on a schedule so you can see what's going on. We had a great summer reading programs. We had over almost 800 readers. And Kelly did a nice summary for you of the number of books read in minutes by our participants. So it was exciting to see kind of that engagement again after the pandemic last summer, kind of affecting things a little bit. And then you have a flyer for the Friends of the Library book sale and their newsletter information. We are going to try to have new library information available at that book sale for at least part of the day so that people in the community can kind of see those things up close, but we're still working on getting that ready to go. Does anybody have any questions about anything in the report?
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Communications. The first one is the library service letter 2023 operational reimbursements.
Yeah, so this is just a letter from Dane County. Basically, with the pandemic, it kind of affected how they chose to reimburse libraries. So Dane County provides some funding to libraries that serve funding to libraries in Dane County that serve Dane County residents. And there's a pretty complex funding formula with averages over the last 3 years for many different facets of service and a building facility number and all sorts of things. But to make a long story short, they've kind of held that amount that they funded libraries to be steady for budgeting purposes because of all the different factors and ways libraries responded during the pandemic, and so that's great for us for budgeting. However, this is the last year that they plan to hold that for 2023, to hold that kind of baseline. The challenge is, though, they're not just returning the old methodology, they're looking at just rethinking the formula entirely, which is good, but it's also a little bit challenging because we don't know what factors they'll determine to base it on, and we don't know especially how that will impact us going into a new library. And then, which years, if they're using an average over 3 years or not, and what that'll do for us. There's a little bit of a delay usually in the statistics when they have the statistics and when we get the funding, so it's always hard because we're always kind of a 2-year lag behind the statistics and the year, so it takes a little bit to catch up if you have significant changes in service. So that's a lot more of an explanation than you probably needed. Basically, we're getting the same funding for next year, and then just to know moving forward, it could be a change moving forward.
Village board announcements. Carlene, is there anything besides the DEI that you wanted to mention or talk about?
Not really. I know that there's still ongoing conversation about what's going to happen at 249 North Main, and Jennifer already mentioned the study. The Sustainability Committee and Transportation Committee have started their meetings, and we'll be making some kinds of recommendations moving forward, but there's there's a lot going on. Probably also, I don't know this piece, so I'm speculating, so probably don't want to put in the notes, but I know that we're considering that the next big project is the senior center, and I know that there's been money allocated there for starting that process so that we are clear about what can and cannot happen in the space before we move forward. So those are the things that I can report.
Excellent, thanks Carleen. School district announcements?
School started, and it was really, really a fun beginning of the year. High energy, really positive. It's just been great. And then we are also starting our informational campaign in the referendum. So I will just allow you to pass this information along. And as part of that informational effort, I was able to see the library staff at the Monarch Festival and the 4K event. And it was lovely. There were story walks at both events, and stories being read by Miss Wendy, and last night they were signing up families of 4K students for library cards. So it was just great. Very appreciative also of the partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, discussion and possible action items. The first one is the 2023 library budget request.
So I'm going to hand out a paper copy of what I emailed out yesterday. So just a little bit of background on this is that the village board, each department kind of submits a budget request. And with all the departments having submitted their requests, there's a request for $150,000 more than there is available. So the village is trying to target the requests and get those down to the available funding so that they can have a budget. So each department had met with the village finance director and administrator earlier this week to talk about their needs and then to try to, make reasonable accommodations to try to get everything to fit within the available funding. So we're kind of at a point where it's pretty clear that the village's capacity to fund all the department needs is beyond, it does not meet what those needs are. And so they're trying to, make those adjustments. So one, we had kind of included a request for a new full-time position, a teen librarian that would help Kelly and Wendy moving into the new library. One of the main concerns we have is, staffing a bigger library, a 2-story library with more desks and just a bigger space, and then some of the services that we haven't been able to offer in the current library. So there's a lot of reasons and a lot of things that that new position would do. However, given the limitations, it's, having talked to Martin and Lisa, it's not likely that we would be able to fund both that new position and also participate fully in the compensation study. That we'd have to have some dollars come off of our request most likely. They certainly recognize that the library board has the autonomy that if we wish to present both requests to the village board, we would be able to do that. But I want to provide the context that the village board would be unlikely to fund both requests even if they wanted to, just because of all the needs and the pressures they're facing. The village has levy limits that limit the amount that they can appropriate from taxes. And then have some commitments, like a position that we added last year is phased in over 2 years. So some of those dollars hit last year and some of those dollars are hitting in 2023. So I talked to, I think part of the village priority is to work on that compensation study. They want to make sure that village employees are paid commensurate with their work and commensurate with market rates, and then just to keep capable employees. And so that's kind of an important effort that they're doing. So I guess my recommendation would be that we, if we need to scale back our request, that we postpone the request for the teen librarian to 2024. It's still an important need and we still want to request it, but with the timeline for the new library kind of up in the air, we don't want to ask for it. We could certainly benefit for it, but it'll be more important when we actually are moving into that new library, and it'll be kind of critical then. And so we can kind of be a good partner by, by choosing that. I think it also positions us well. We don't want to have a place where our employees are not being compensated in the same way as a result of that study. We want to have, be on board and have our employees receive the same benefits and expertise from that study. I talked to Kelly quite a bit. She's the children's librarian about that. She would be kind of managing, and it would impact her department most if we didn't get that position. And she's she perfectly understands the situation, is okay delaying it, but feels very strongly that we do need it for the new library. So I think, I guess my recommendation would be that we amend our budget request to take out the request for that position in '23 and just postpone that request to '24. This spreadsheet I sent out by email has the bottom line showing what that would mean and what our new budget request would be, just so you can see how it's different from last month. So the main differences are the salary came out of that salaries operation line, and then it also impacted some of the benefits associated with that. So FICA, Medicare, pension, health insurance, those lines were adjusted accordingly because that position was taken out. So if you turn over to the back side, it shows you the total expenditures at the bottom and what that total bottom line would be for our proposal. So it gets us around 4% of an increase, which is still very generous given the current climate. There's a couple requests that we talked about previously related to the new library and costs for things like electricity that will probably go up, that our budget is part of that. So I'm happy to take any questions about that, but I just kind of feel that it's good for us to be able to prioritize those needs this year, and then maybe next year it's going to be a little bit more critical when we know more about what our schedule is and what our needs are. We can make a better case having thought through that, being able to present it more thoughtfully.
Questions or thoughts?
I would like to thank you, Jennifer, for thinking that through and speaking with Kelly about that. But as part of the personnel committee, I do agree with your recommendation to remove that position until next year, because we have been trying to make equitable decisions for all of the library staff and increase wages appropriately. So I think that that's the best decision for us moving forward. So thank you.
Questions or comments on the budget? John, yeah.
Just want to be sure I'm reading this correctly. Under expenditures and revenues for 2021 actual, it appears that we received that we had fewer expenditures. Am I reading this correctly?
Which one are you looking at, John?
Building expenditures and then revenues.
Yes, so we had quite a bit of turnover. So we had quite a bit of turnover in 2021. So part of that is vacancies and positions. If you can't fill them immediately, there's some time between when the current employee leaves and when a new person can assume that position. And so that sometimes results in cost savings for that. So we don't always max out our budget. In a perfect world, we'd spend 99.99% of what we budget. We do have a general fund, not using the right terminology, but dollars that we don't spend as part of our budget are available for us to spend in special circumstances moving forward. It's not something we can use as part of our operating budget, but if like a one-time expense like a furnace repair were to come up, those funds would be available for special situations. We don't tend to ask for more than we need or plan to use because, then they wouldn't want to fund it. So generally we target the right amount, but there are times where for whatever reason we don't spend dollars that we thought we would need to for very good reasons, and then those dollars mean that our expenditures are less than the budgeted amount.
So here's part of my confusion.
Mm-hmm.
I was presuming that the total under revenues would be revenues, but on the left it says total expenditures. I didn't label the bottom correctly. So the bottom of the revenue section. Should that say total revenues?
Should say total. No, it's total. Well, they should match. So the bottom one should say total revenues. You're right. I probably copied that cell. So basically, the revenues and the expenditures should equal themselves for the 2023 proposed column. I'll fix that for next year, so I don't copy that mistake over.
Okay.
But basically the proposed revenue should equal the proposed total expenditures on the section immediately above it.
And it does to the penny for 2023, obviously.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, to the penny.
It does.
Yeah, because that's just the proposed and the budgeted amounts. So.
Yep.
all other parts of what you're seeing here is exactly what we went over last month. And we went through all the other increases and they didn't have concerns about anything else. It was mostly just, the need to fund all the village departments equitably.
So do you need one of us to make the recommendation that, to postpone the request for the new teen librarian? Is that official? Are we ready for that?
I think so. I think would it be
Okay.
approving just this budget that would do that, or do you want us to make a separate motion that says we'll postpone the 2023 personnel recommendation until 2024 and then do the budget? Do you want those separately?
I think it would be good to say something about the intent for the teen librarian position, because then I would know when I'm crafting our budget at the get-go that I can include that as a talking point, as direction. So maybe if you could combine those into one motion, or it could be two separate motions, but that would give me direction for next year if you felt like there was direction you could give me.
So, we could say a motion such as, I move to postpone the request for the new teen librarian position to the 2024 budget request and approve the 2023 budget as presented.
So that is a great motion. Is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
Carleen seconds it. Any
Discussion.
questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Say
Aye.
nay. Excellent, thank you.
Good job
Jennifer.
stating that, Leslie. Well done.
And thank you, Jennifer, for all your work on this, for all your thoughtfulness, we appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Next are donor naming opportunities for the new library.
So this has been on the agenda because I've really wanted to sort it out, but it's really complicated because anything you add really impacts like all the other donors, and I don't want to do anything that kind of could cause problems for any other situation. So I think I'm going to limit my recommendation to what was in the packet for tonight, and then I kind of delved into the next level of hopefully making more detailed recommendations last month. But we just really want to make sure that we're not making any changes so that somebody that's sponsored at a certain level would either miss out on that opportunity, or that, we have to go through the process of contacting 20 people and causing, confusion about what's going on. So the recommendation I have in the packet is we are trying to add some additional opportunities. So there's 2 opportunities I'm recommending that we take off the list because those opportunities are no longer available with the redesign of the library. And then we did add back a family restroom off of the lobby that's available for everybody to use. And so I'm recommending we add that at the same level as the other restroom spaces. And then lastly, I am recommending that we add the patio as a naming opportunity at this point. So those are the 4 things I would like to get approval for tonight. I do want to look at the levels for the study rooms. Many of our study rooms are not sponsored, and that's a very appealing space, a space or a room. It's a very appealing opportunity because our campaign initially was for $4 million. A lot of our naming opportunities are a little bit higher than you might expect in a facility of our nature. And so I want to look at changing the level to get into those spaces. That might mean that some donors that have already given might qualify for those who previously hadn't selected or qualified for that opportunity. We want to make sure those folks have a chance to speak for those first, but also hope that they'll create some new opportunities for folks that are considering or might consider increasing if they knew a space like that were available. We just want to make sure that doesn't cause problems for folks that maybe donated at a different level because of opportunities that were available at the time that they chose. So still sorting through that a little bit, and there is a donor that's still waiting to select a naming opportunity that I do want to meet with before we make changes to make sure we're not leaving them out of the conversations.
I would take a motion to approve Jennifer's recommendations for the revisions to the naming opportunities. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's longer than normal. Okay, we'll say that Carleen said yes.
She did with Chad.
Next is the special meeting for project bids.
So with the project schedule, the village board on October 3rd, we'll be discussing, they'll be seeing the results of the bids. They'll be doing 2 steps that they need to do that will allow us to award the contract. So one of those steps is just a resolution basically saying we borrowed this much money so far. We said we would borrow X number of dollars still, and basically saying that they're promising to borrow the money they said they would, because basically we can't take a contract for money we don't have unless we get their kind of formal approval saying that they plan to do that. So that's one thing Martin will work on. The second thing is they're basically going to authorize you to award the contract for that, assuming that we have bids that fall within the budget parameters. So we're hoping that we get bids that fit that target number. We have a little bit of flexibility with the alternates to add or remove things to get to that target number, and then we have a few accounts that we might be able to steal a few dollars from here or there if we're close, but ideally wouldn't touch in a perfect world. So to award the contract, we would want to do a special meeting, and the reason we want to do that is because if we want to start construction before winter, and we're allowing like 2 weeks for contract negotiation with the village attorney. We have a contract presented as part of the bid document, so hopefully that'll facilitate it. But basically, we would want to hold a special meeting that would just be reviewing the bids and hopefully being able to approve awarding that contract to the lowest qualified bidder and start construction. So because of those board meets on Monday, I'm hoping that we can get enough people to meet on Tuesday, October 4th. And we can really do any time we can get enough people to do that. I'd prefer to have as many of you there as possible. We're hoping it'll be a simple decision, but we have no idea what we're going to get back. So.
And what time are you hoping for the meeting?
We can do whatever works. We usually meet at 5, so I'll throw that out there as the first try. Would 5 work for everybody here? And Curleen, you on the phone?
I would not be. I have a board meeting that's 5 to 6.
Do you want to wait till 6:30?
What if we met at 6:30? Would that work for everybody here still? So let's plan on.
I'm good with that.
Leslie going back to back like that.
No problem.
She's like,
Okay.
I do that all the time. Okay, so I will schedule that for Tuesday, October 4th at 6:30. We could do that on Zoom if it's going to be quick, but I'm also worried it just might be easier to do in person because of the nature of the conversation.
Sure.
So if you're okay with that, I'll see if the space is available for that meeting.
Okay.
Excellent.
And I'm really hoping that this will be we won't have as many special meetings where you need to come to extra meetings once we get kind of started. So we'll try to follow the schedule as much as we possibly can.
Excellent. Well, that leads us to our next special meeting date, which is October 4th at 6:30. And then our next regular meeting will be October 12th at 5 p.m. here. Are there any future agenda items anybody would like to add? Okay. Then could I?
This is Carleen.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful by that time we will know what is happening with the DEI training, and I'd like to be able to talk to the board about that, because we're encouraging as many board members and committee members who work with Village to participate, so I'd like to add that.
Thank you, Carleen.
We will do that. Thank you. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn. So moved. There's a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Go back to my half-hour meetings.
Don't get used to it.
Jenny, how confident are you that we'll see bids within the budget parameters? Because Jennifer said it twice, so it's on my mind.
Yeah, so I mean, we've done, I think, everything we can to do it. I know 4 contractors are planning on bidding it, so we'll have good competition.
That's great.